Can you send the link to that YouTube also, if that's not too
I
much
think I
trouble?
can. Yeah, let me find that.
Oh yeah, it says waiting. It hasn't started broadcasting on this YouTube link yet. Oh yeah, it has.
Yeah, now it's
Boom.
going. All right, I'm gonna text
Thank you, sir.
you guys.
I just want to drop it into the Generalist community.
Great.
Oh yeah, I'll drop it in the acquired Slack. God, so many. And then Packy can drop it in his small community of the entire Twitter universe.
Yeah.
Perfect.
It's a very
All right.
intimate.
Well, we've got a little bit of duct tape here, but I can't believe this is. I think it's actually working.
I think so too. If not, we'll probably go for like 20 minutes without realizing it's broken. So that'll be fun for us.
Indeed. Well, happy New Year's, everybody.
Happy New Year's. Great to be with you guys.
Likewise. Where's everybody checking in from?
Back in Seattle, it was almost Maui, but flights managed to work out at the last second that I actually got home.
Work out or not work out?
Well, it depends what way you're looking at it. It would be working out in the sense of it would be pretty sweet to be trapped in Maui for another 4 or 5 days. It would be less sweet in that the only places to stay were $1,700 a night, very fancy hotels at the last minute.
I can't hear Packy.
I think you're muted on
the restream.
On the live stream. On the restream.
Hear him on Twitter Spaces. For everyone out there in the audience who's wondering what on earth is going on, we're doing Twitter Spaces in addition to also we've got a video version going where all of us are on this thing we're trying out called Restream.io, which sends to a tweet that has a live video of all of us and a YouTube stream that has a live video of all of us. So that is
and LinkedIn too.
Yes,
we're live on LinkedIn
for those of you who consume all your favorite content on LinkedIn.
Hello to the Not Boring community on LinkedIn. I think this is working now.
Yeah.
You sent me this
we got
mic.
you.
I forgot to turn it on.
Where did you get that mic? What amateur sent you that?
I know. I need a more idiot-proof mic.
We started sending mics to all of our guests, and we recently had someone say, so this is my 4th mic in the last couple of months. I think other podcasters are also starting to do that. So I guess maybe we'll stop. I don't know. One. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Packy, you look like you're calling in from the home office.
Calling in from the home office. Got my acquired gear going back in Brooklyn after a nice couple days in Philly, so not quite Maui. And we're just back in it now.
Sweet.
The Maui of the East Coast.
Exactly right.
That's what they say.
There are lots of Mauis of the East Coast, but most of them are not in Philly.
Can confirm.
Mario, where are you?
I am in SF. As hard as it was for you to get back to Seattle, I assume it was, equally hard for me to get to SF because apparently the plane that we were waiting for was stuck in Seattle for like 2 days. So got to enjoy the TWA hotel and
nice.
stayed a night there at the last minute, but finally made it out here. So it's nice to be with some family. So on your West Coast time.
And you're safe out there?
Safe as can be.
Wow.
Yeah. That happens in California.
Yeah.
Speaking of, I am just outside Healdsburg in beautiful Sonoma County. Yeah, for folks on YouTube, I think maybe see the Russian River back there.
Oh yeah,
lovely Airbnb outside Healdsburg. Fortunately, with great internet.
Almost great internet. You're like a little. It's funny to hear someone this choppy say I have great internet. It's just patently false. Your audio is great though. Yeah.
Okay. So we thought we'd do a little. It's been a big year for all of us. Thought it'd be fun to get together, do a little celebration, a little recap. How many collabs have we done? This is, if we count this as an idea dinner, 6 or 7 of those. We've done a bunch of episodes.
Let's see. Idea dinner. Have we done 3 idea dinners plus this?
I think that's right.
I think this is a 4th. Yeah.
Okay, and then we did the Ethereum piece with Packy, the not boring story with Packy, the
Slack.
SBF interview with Mario. Was Slack 2020 or 2021? I think
That
it
was
was 2020
But we
Oh,
did
good point.
the
Yeah.
Roblox DPO preview with
True.
Mario.
with Mario. So that's
Yeah.
8 just with Acquired. And then Packy and Mario, you guys have done what, 3
Two?
together?
We've
2.
done
This
2.
year? Yeah. All right. That's so cool, guys.
That's an even
fun to
10.
recap that.
Hell.
It was an honor.
That's really fun.
And we're also fun. Ben texted all of us before and asked if we wanted to have a drink on this, and all of us said no in our own way.
In our own way.
David blamed
Mario,
the
you guys have
baby
no
and
excuse.
sleep. Yeah, I know, right?
No, it's pathetic. It's just who I am.
Drinking a latte. And one of these, have you guys ever bought one of these Mountain Valley gigantic things of
I
bubbly
love
water?
them. Yes.
I've been buying them. It's like a funny guilty pleasure. The first time I went to Benchmark's San Francisco office, they were like, "Do you want a water?" And I was like, "Sure." And like they brought out this gigantic glass. I mean, this thing it's a quart. It's 33.8 fluid ounces in this beautiful green bottle. And so now whenever I'm buying one at a Whole Foods and I'm feeling fancy, pick it up.
That's why Bill
It's a
Gurley
hell of a
always
humble
looks so
brag, by the way.
hydrated.
Oh, that I
I'm just
once
hanging
had
out
a
at
meeting at
Benchmark's
Benchmark.
office. Well, the last time I was there, though.
Yeah.
This is
So
fun that we're
let's-
getting comments in from YouTube, LinkedIn, all of that on the side here. I can't believe there's actually people on LinkedIn listening to this. Hello.
That's true.
Also, the person on LinkedIn being "Yo, was good, boys" was very much not what I expected. the vibe
From
to be.
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn
thanks
is
to-
where everything's moving these days.
By the way, I was browsing. So do you know Amazon has like kind of a social network? Like you can view people's
way.
profile pages on Amazon, and you can see like all their reviews, and like it even has like a profile picture and a banner picture, and like no one has set them. And David, you have one. I was looking because you're the #1 review on 7 Powers. Your picture's like 10, 12 years old. You have short hair. You're missing a banner picture. It's very incomplete. But like they clearly didn't intend for you to find people other than through reviews. So we all have a profile page, but no real social graph.
Wait, David, you're the #1 reviewer on 7 Powers?
So that's my #1 claim to fame. I should change my Twitter bio to
Wow.
that.
Can we get the photo of David with short hair sometime? By the way,
Yeah, I'll throw a link in the chat.
Oh, yeah.
pre-flow.
sure.
Pre-flow.
When did you get the flow, David?
I got the flow in 2012.
Oh, wow.
After when I
Wow.
started at business school. I kind of always wanted long hair, and but I was like, oh, I need to be buttoned up for the workplace. And I was like, well, I'm going back to school. Like, why not? Just let it go. And
Look at
I
us
think it's a
now.
better look. Well, people can see the photo in the chat, and then they can decide if I'm better.
It's a pretty
Oh,
low
it
res
works for you.
photo. It's like, we'll have to see how this goes.
The flow's iconic now.
So let's recap 2021. We thought we could go through Acquired, Not Boring, and the Generalist. Talk about this big year for all of us.
I'm already self-conscious because you guys have just had like the most bananas years of all time. I'm gonna be like, oh, I grew like this much. You'll be like, oh yeah, I grew that much in February. That was fun. So I'm already worried.
This is not, first of all, not about that. Second of all, let us remind you that we had 3 years of like linear growth with a slow slope, maybe 4 years of that. So
We added 5 listeners per year.
Something,
As long as it's
compounding,
not positive.
something.
yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm pumped.
Should we start with Acquired? What's the best kind of way to recap? What was the most popular Acquired episode of the year?
Ooh, I have this pulled up. First of
Let
all,
me see if
so
I can guess.
all right, sounds good. Let me warm you all up with a quick
Okay.
comment first, which is I pulled up our total downloads ever, and sort of just episodes by most downloaded, and 8 of the 10 were released this year. So they've had the shortest
Wow.
amount of time
Yeah, that's
and
wild.
have the most. So the only 2 that weren't from this year in the top 10 are SpaceX and Airbnb.
And Airbnb
Okay.
was December 2020. So,
Yeah,
basically this year.
Yeah.
What's number one?
Berkshire Hathaway Part 1. Which I actually wouldn't have guessed. I thought it would be TSMC
That's
because
what I was going to
TSMC
guess.
has
Yeah.
gotten like a lot of Twitter love. We managed to like hit this intersection of like Silicon Twitter plus Tech Twitter plus like FinTwit.
FinTwit.
That was this like perfect.
Semiconductor Twitter is legit.
Yeah, I have
Wow.
for anyone who follows me on Twitter, I have like a list called Silicon that I use just to follow people who are like analysts of as I was preparing for the TSMC episode, and it's a whole different universe when you dive into there.
Who's the
I'm gonna
number
try
one
and-
must follow on Silicon?
That's a good question. Honestly, I think it's the NZS guys.
I think we got a John Bathgate and NCS.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Because
You
they're
guys did a great
curators too.
pod with them, right?
They find a lot of the best like other stuff to reshare. But
Are you?
Yeah.
So when you, I always struggle with this a little bit too. When you're, after the TSMC episode, are you continuing to just stay up on Silicon or are you like on to the next one?
It's a great question. It's hard. Like, I certainly can't stay as current as we are for the episodes. Like, I think I hit the peak knowledge of all I will ever know about a company in the final few minutes of an episode, and then it's like I start forgetting it. There's some half-life to my knowledge after that, and it gets like little re-ups every time I'll like read an article or something, but never that knowledable again.
Do you guys get
It's
the
like
same
finals, right?
thing? Totally. It's just like writing a term paper.
Yeah. You're like, man, what do I remember about the American Republic 2 years later? I forget. But for a moment there, you really feel like you're on top of it.
I will say though, they're probably on average maybe 2 or 3 times a year we'll do an acquired topic, and then I'll be like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna need to become a shareholder in this company or buy tokens or something. And TSMC made that cut for me this year. Hasn't performed, that great. I think it's basically flat since I invested, but I was just like, there is, other than the geopolitical threat of what happens with Taiwan in the coming years, which I think the company can probably survive. I just don't see any future where they're not like an incredibly important piece of like the entire world's ecosystem.
Did you buy ASML also?
I did not. I probably should.
I did, but I think it's like the Tesla of Europe from like a multiples perspective. I think it might be the most valuable European tech company, and like certainly by any reasonable metric, they're not.
Huh.
Packy, I'm curious.
Oh, yeah, 332 billion.
Wow.
Do you feel the same way? Like, how do you stay up after you write a piece?
I don't. I mean, it's really, really tough. So I think this year, certainly compared to 2020, when I was writing kind of more just like one company at a time, that was really hard. Now it feels like, occasionally I'll do one company, but more it's a part of a big kind of, arcing narrative. And so it's a little bit easier just to kind of stay up. But it's even writing about this stuff every week, it's impossible to stay up on everything that's going on. Obviously I have people DM all the time or at cocktail parties ask me about like very specific things, and I have no idea what they're talking about. So I don't know. I mean, for me, it's just picking a few things that I'm really interested in, making sure that I'm at least like kind of knowledgeable enough, continuing to follow people on Twitter and read and all of that. And, I've given up all hope on being fully knowledgeable at this point.
Well, it's impossible in Web3 also.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure there's like approximately 1,000 people that are trying to do something like Constitution DAO, but for a different object. And like, yeah, you couldn't possibly stay up on all that.
Although my favorite right now, my friend Brett started something called Fries DAO, and they're
like Fries Electronics.
No, like fries, like French fries, and they're trying to buy fast food chains. And like the fun part about this, and I think I might write a little bit about this on Monday, is that like each one of these things seems so stupid. Like, like why not just put together an LLC and go out and buy, I think even Fries DAO will have LLCs involved in the whole thing. to go buy franchises, but each one I think has like a little innovation that they're adding to the mix. So this will be like, I think the interesting thing on this one will be one, I guess, kind of around like decentralized management of single entities, but the other is around what you do with profits when these are governance tokens and not securities. And so they have some kind of interesting ideas there on what to do with the actual profits from the franchises. And so like all of those are just, I think adding one little piece that I think this year, frankly, like we're going to start seeing DAOs come together and do some really, really cool shit, and like solve some really hard problems. And so I think each one of these dumb things, or like dumb looking from the outside things, is adding one little piece that ultimately those big DAOs will need to go do some cool stuff.
I like that framing. It feels like, just rapid imitation and evolution that'll just help us sort of naturally select for a really incredibly interesting structure.
Totally. I mean, I just read Complexity finally after I think it came out 30 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
But it does feel like these are just
book.
Exactly. It does feel like these are just kind of models almost, like just these digital models that allow for really rapid kind of iteration and experimentation, but with real people. And then you might be able to apply those models to to other things that are maybe less digitally constrained.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, this is the theory of startups, right? Like, this is why startups exist. Like, many of them look stupid and are stupid, but some of them are not. And now in Web3, it's just happening at like such a crazy fast pace, and anybody can do it, and you don't need any permission, despite what Jack says.
Can someone explain to me? I know we're way so like to think about the levels of like function calls that we're in. We started with how's everyone's year been? We went to acquired. But like, can I take a sidetrack here? What is the Bitcoin maximalist argument? Like, I understand. I'm very amenable to this Web3 argument. It's decentralized AWS that everybody owns, and you pay with the, that's like my favorite analogy for non-Web3 people is like, it's the globally decentralized computer. It's a new application platform. You can easily see how there's intrinsic value created by that. What is the like, I'm long Bitcoin but short Web3 perspective?
I think there's a few things. One, it's kind of purely decentralized, and the OG and Satoshi isn't even a real person, and there's no central control. And what you really want out of this is just a financial asset that nobody can control, and so that anybody in the world can own and access equally, and all of that. And anything that happens in Web3, or like Ethereum, Solana, any one of the L1s, like even the existence of many other L1, this is smart contract L1s, proves that they're all shitcoins, because it's easy for anybody to start a different one and kind of take attention away. It's not, I mean, I'm not making the argument probably particularly well, because it's not obviously one that I subscribe to, but I think from Jack's perspective in particular, it's really like, if he's just bought in fully on this Bitcoin thing, and anything else is a distraction from that. I don't know why he went so hard after VCs in particular, and why it wasn't just like purely pro Bitcoin versus anti Web3 and anti VCs. We need a break, guys. Like, I mean, don't be out here. But I think that is his perspective, is that like he really does believe in the power of having this kind of like decentralized world currency, and anything else is a distraction.
I mean, this is more of a meta point, but and this is also an argument that I think will get very little sympathy, but I honestly think VCs get a tough rap. Like,
here we go. We've moved into the feel sympathy
go.
for VCs part of the hour.
And also, I'm the only one here who's not a VC, so I feel like I can say it. But for real, Jack built 2 big companies with VC money that like served a really valuable purpose. For all of these,
Totally.
Web3 products that are getting VC money, like, yeah, they're using it to get off the ground and to bring it to the masses. Like, yeah, VCs do a bunch of corny stuff, but it's such an easy target that I don't think is particularly articulately attacked beyond just like vests. Lol.
It seems to me a flaw in Jack's argument is in traditional equity startups. Yeah, it was so stacked for the VCs. Like,
Yeah.
Nobody on this call could have invested in Square when it was, a private company, or Twitter when it was a private company, and those VCs made billions and billions of dollars because of that, and it was just closed access. But like everything that Andreessen's investing in Web3 and like anybody listening here, any of us can just go buy tokens in that at the same time. Like I bought a bunch of tokens after we had Ronil on the show, and I was like, this is awesome. And I was gonna ask him, I think I did ask him after the call, I was like, yo, what's the best way to invest? And he's like, go to Uniswap, hook up your MetaMask. And
I think he actually explicitly told you, I can't tell you how to invest.
I think that is true.
I think he said it is traded on major exchanges, but I can't, like, decentralized or centralized exchanges.
And the interesting thing there is, I do think that probably over time, the amount that a Web3 VC is able to purchase in a protocol comes down. Like I think probably it looks like a minimally extractive protocol almost over time. But I do think, particularly in Web3, when people can invest earlier and when there are millions of projects that come out, most of which are scams, I do think that VCs do play kind of an important filtering role. And so, a VC can invest, token launch, and somebody can invest right away versus waiting 7 years. So I think it's a good kind of signaling and filtering mechanism, but over time, probably the amount that they own comes down, and that's a really good thing.
Yeah, at the end of the day, there's sort of like information creators in any market. Like you sort of have price setters and price takers, and it's kind of, even though they're conflicted, it's kind of nice for the whole ecosystem to have price setters that are doing diligence or that are making informed decisions rather than like, however memes sort of come to be that people sort of glom on. And when you look all the way back at the original thing, it was actually super low signal, but then got the gain turned all the way up, and then a whole bunch of people ran into something that didn't come from originally a strong signal. So, even though certainly the people pouring millions of dollars into a project early on become wildly conflicted in it, they're doing actual research to found the original investment decision.
And the other good thing is that in many cases, they're locked in for a very long time. And so, instead of somebody just kind of coming in and buying and selling and moving on to the next thing, VCs are typically locked in for at least 2 years, maybe more in a lot of these projects. It's also, I think, very easy now after this year to say like, oh my God, look at how crazy it is that the VCs own this. Where like, Solana's early investors, that was an incredibly non-consensus bet to make.
Totally.
Or, like Flow, I think over time, like, looked like a crazy bet. Dapper Labs looked like a crazy bet, and like ran into trouble before it blew up with MBA. So VCs look, I guess, kind of extractive when they're right in hindsight, but a lot of this could have just been a house of cards that fell apart, and they own a bunch of shit coins.
Well, I'm glad we've now alienated the audience enough.
So VCs are cool and all, but like back to us. Like let's talk about us, guys.
All right, so just to wrap on Acquire, I also pulled some data that surprised me. We did our usual 16 season episodes this year: Bitcoin, New York Times, Meituan, Rec Room, 3 on Berkshire, Ethereum with Packy, 2 on A16Z, TSMC, 2 on Standard Oil, Not Boring, FTX with Mario, and then CAA with Michael Ovitz, which was a highlighted year for me, was interviewing Michael. Great. That was so fun. And he was so great and so gracious. He sent us a super nice note when we released the episode. That was awesome. So we did our usual 16 season episodes, our usual 10 specials. We had like Honam, Kevin Rose, Michael Malvison, NZS, all awesome. How many LP episodes do you think we did, Ben?
I feel like, let's see. So that's 26, 18.
Wow, 19.
Wow.
Which is like in my mind,
track
I was
and plan
like,
this stuff.
In my mind, I was thinking like, we probably, we did 16 season, 10 specials. We probably did about 10 LP episodes. No, it was our biggest content creation was LP episodes this year.
Not surprising. Those are like, just to like, they're so much easier to do. Yeah. It's like we hop on, we don't quite wing it. We do research, we do an outline, but it's mostly like find super interesting people that can talk a lot on their own and dive in with them. And it's not like the LP show when it first started, which was like, you and I are going to create a 6-part class on how to become a venture capitalist and methodically, single-handedly walk through that. It's very much a like, yeah, that they're deep cuts. But yeah, not surprising to me, that was our biggest category.
Yeah.
And talk to us about the decision to make those free for everybody.
Yeah. Well, my hope was that. Well, I guess let me take it back to a goal. The goal was to make it so that there was an appropriate audience size for the quality of content that was being created with the caliber of guests that we were having on. I always felt this twinge of embarrassment when we would ask someone to come on the LP show and they know have acquired the brand and they don't really know that much about the LP show. And then we finish the episode, we post it and we share it. And we say, we're live. And they're like, cool. Like, how do I listen?
Where do I see it? Yeah.
And I'm
how
like,
can I
oh
send it
yeah,
to
I'll send,
people?
of course I've sent you a free subscription. They're like, well, how do other people listen? I'm like, well, you know, they become an LP. It's $100 a year. And it's immediately just this awkward situation.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to keep a lot of value for LPs, and we did that in the form of keeping all episodes exclusive for 2 weeks and by keeping things like Zoom calls and some other Web3 related stuff we have planned LP only. But the goal was like, well, okay, what's a decent audience size and how fast can we get there? And so we did this a month ago, and the LP show now has 15,000 subscribers, which is about 10%. The main show is a little over 160,000. And so we'll see how much that can kind of grow to and how fast. But, you know, I look at it like it's not going to be as broad of an appeal because it really is sort of deeper, nerdier topics. Like a lot of people are interested in SBF, in FTX with SBF and Mario. Less people, but certainly a even more passionate subset of those people are going to want to hear the Race Capital story of how they invested in Solana and FTX. And like we have that coming out with Chris and Edith from Race Capital. And like it's always, I think, going to be a smaller audience, but certainly a passionate one.
That's amazing. So you're 160 or so thousand subscribers now, which is wild.
Yeah, Chartable
Amazing.
tracks monthly unique listeners.
What was that at the beginning of the year?
Around 60,000.
Oh, wow.
Whoa, damn.
It was a big year.
Was there one was there one thing that kind of like kicked it off, or was it just all year an onslaught?
David, what do you think?
Well, I think TSMC was very shareable. So that, I think, brought a lot of new listeners. I think probably Berkshire, too, just like doing that.
Yeah.
That brought FinTwit in, I think.
Because it's expanding the circles that acquired is interesting, too. The other thing that we finally figured out is like people share content when they get credit for being smart for having found it. And so it's not that we necessarily changed the type of content we were creating to appeal to that, but it helped me set my expectations for when is something going to go versus when is someone going to listen, have gotten value, but then think like, will I accrue social capital for having shared this? No. And I think that for the first several years of Acquired, that was sort of our, that was a little bit the fatal flaw, is like we weren't necessarily doing stuff that was zeitgeisty enough in the moment for you to feel like I just shared this super interesting thing about something that the world cares about right now. And I think we try and key a little bit more into that than we used to.
Makes sense. Do you see that people go back, because you do have this catalog and this library of episodes that aren't, that for many years were not zeitgeisty and so are kind of more evergreen? Do people who come in and start listening go back and just rip through the whole catalog?
Yes, it's crazy. It's the strangest thing when people join the Slack and they're like, all right, I listened to the most recent episode and now I've listened to 28 previous ones and I'm working my way through. It's astonishing to me because I'm like, I can't imagine listening to certainly the stuff from our first couple of years just isn't. We just weren't as researched.
With you guys, or is it a different dynamic with newsletters?
In terms of back catalog, getting
back catalog,
access? So it's hard to know because I don't think my instrumentation is particularly good in terms of read counts until probably 3 months ago. But broadly and anecdotally, yes. Like there are some pieces that seem to continually crop up on people's radar where they'll be like, "Oh yeah, I found you from this thing from 6 months ago," or stuff like that. So there are, I think, some pieces that just like become a little bit like reference points. I assume that's true for you too, Packy, right?
It is. And it's interesting. I mean, like for me, I think this year, Great Online Game was probably like the one that people talked about the most, but was not actually even in my top 5. I think it was number 7 most read. And so that's, I think, kind of interesting too. I would imagine it's brought a bunch of people in, but not enough. Maybe like once they're in, they talk about it, but otherwise, it's not the one that grabbed the most attention. Something like an Axie is, where there's this like huge community of people who are already bought into Axie and love it and want to share it and all of that. But maybe because Great Online Game didn't have like a particular company, it didn't share as well, but certainly the one that people reference the most.
Well, anecdotally, I shared Great Online Game. I'm sorry, I shared Axie with a few execs that I know in the gaming industry, specifically to explain, hey, there's a new business model emerging called Play to Earn, and the Great Online Game, I remember listening to it on a run and like nodding and like smiling along with it. People probably thought I was a crazy person on this run, but I felt like I was being enlightened by like all this cool ways that you were stitching stuff together. But then afterwards, I was like, there's a general, I think I tweeted about it. I was like, this is eye-opening, but it wasn't like, hey, I can think of 5 people who must listen to this as a form of education for themselves, the way I could with the Axie piece.
That's super interesting.
I will say though, I think that we're going to be reading the Great Online Game in like 10 years time still. And like, when there are those lists of like things you need to read to get, started on technology and, startups, like I think it'll be on there. It's such a good piece, man.
Thank you.
Well, see, I mean,
thank you. I just think it's very interesting, just to your point, just what gets shared and what does not get shared. Mario, what was your most popular piece of the year?
So I don't really know because I only started to do read tracking in like 3 months ago, but since then, Tiger by a lot. And I think it probably is regardless. But yeah, that one like had a little zeitgeistiness to it in the way that you guys are talking about. And I think probably put together a few different pieces of the story in one place. So that one I think did well. And then the other ones that
also, Mario, David and I have talked to some founders recently who specifically read that to prepare for engaging with Tiger in a fundraise. So, like, I know it's in the same way that that Packy's was sort of the definitive piece on you need to learn about Play to Earn. It's like if you need to learn about Tiger, there's your piece and there's the one from Everett Randall, which is also great, which was a little bit earlier, and like that. Those are great primers on. And like specifically actionable to help with a thing that you have upcoming in your life.
Yeah, that's really cool to hear. I didn't know that. Yeah, Everett's piece is amazing. I definitely used a lot of his thinking and research on the Tiger piece, and hopefully added something to the conversation. But that one, and then the DAO's piece ended up being a pretty big one. I think for a similar purpose. Like I've heard from a bunch of folks, they're like, "Hey, this like ended up being sort of the thing that helped me put this together in a complete way and like understand the landscape." And then similarly for tech in Africa, which someone sent me a screenshot that it's like included in the curriculum at one of like I think University of Michigan's master's program or international development program or something. So that was a trip. That was really cool.
That's awesome.
So
wait,
cool.
Packy, was Axie your number 1 of the year?
It was my number 1 of the year.
Give us your top 5.
So I tweeted this yesterday. Let me pull it up. But I think that one, I mean, that just has such a passionate community of players and people around it. And the Twitter account has a huge following and they shared it. All right. So if we do the top 5, number 5 was the Pareto Frontier, which Wasn't, I don't think, one of my 5 best pieces of the year, but I think it was just recent and the audience just keeps getting bigger. And so that helps. Number 6 was Solana Summer. Number 4 was the piece that I wrote on Shein with Matt Brennan, which I think it just took off in China. And like, sometimes things like that just kind of help, that we have 2 different audiences, that it was able to kind of just catch fire. Number 3 was Own the Internet on Ethereum. Number 2 was Excel Never Dies. And number 1 was Axie. So the really interesting thing there, right, is that, like, other than Parade of Frontier, which I think is just had the benefit of being recent, it is, even if I write more like kind of broad think PC type stuff, like the ones that really like catch hold and spread fastest are the ones with one particular topic and subject.
And how many of those were collaborations?
Of the top, yeah, good point. Of the top 5, 2 of them were collaborations.
Huh. And I wonder if that's, well, maybe there's no signal there because it's like it's equal to the percentage that you, well, no, you don't do that many collaborations. You've probably done 8 to 10 ever. Yeah,
I think that's probably right. Huh. I think Excel is one of those things that you're saying with TSMC where
yes,
it hits the right number of like different groups right in the chest, that I could have written like the word Excel on a piece of paper and people would have shared it because they love Excel.
Well, there's that woman on TikTok.
Yeah. Wow.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Did you see Rex Woodbury's thread about her?
Yeah.
Miss Excel, we're talking about, who's this influencer on TikTok who's making like up to 100K a day on her courses around Excel. It's a really great thread from Rex.
That's how I learned Excel.
Is that
TikTok.
right?
No.
I'm like, I hope the timeline doesn't match up there.
Yeah.
I just learned Excel a couple months ago.
Should we do lowlights?
So you're what? Oh, we got to hear the Generalist year in review. But first, Packy, question. So Solana was a sponsored piece. Were any of the other top ones sponsored?
That's a good question. The next one was Replit at number 8.
At number 8. Wow.
Wow, that's pretty good.
Still, that's pretty awesome. Like 6 and 8 were 9 or 10 sponsored?
No, 9 and 10 were not sponsored.
Okay.
It's still a pretty good hit rate, I would say.
Yeah.
I mean, I know if you would have asked me, like, would a Substack writer get paid a meaningful amount of money to write a piece and have it be one of their top and be on the top of Tech Meme that day with it, I'd have been like, no, hell no. So it's just like it's unprecedented.
I think hopefully also I've gotten better and continue to get better and just have like a wider set of companies to choose from at like picking the right companies to write about. And so like really at this point, everything that I'm writing about in a sponsored deep dive is something that I would write about not as a sponsored deep dive. And that was true-ish before, and there's nothing that I wrote that I didn't believe in, but I think it's particularly true now that like I feel lucky to get to write about the companies that I'm writing about now in the sponsored deep dives.
Pretty cool.
Very cool.
All right, Mario, give us some high level. What's shareable about the run that you've had this year with the Generalist?
It's been a good run, man. I can't complain. I think growth wise, I looked and I think it was 20,000 subscribers at start of the year and
casual 3x
now. Not quite. Which definitely surpassed like all of my expectations for it. So that was a bit nuts. And I think also I learned a bunch about sort of like what the Generalist should be. When I started the year, I had sort of maybe 3-4 more newsletters I was trying to run simultaneously as like part of this suite. And I think what I really became clear, especially in the second half of the year, is like, just do the weekly briefing fucking well and as deeply as possible. And actually, weirdly, people will happily read 10,000 words or 8,000 words on a subject. And that was both, I think, a lot more fun for me. I mean, I've always had a ton of fun doing this, but I feel better about doing that at a high level, and also seems to be more successful. So that was good. And then revenue wise, from zero to a good business, which was was nice, and feels sustainable.
And didn't you move to your own custom website and platform too, and away from Substack this year?
Yeah, so I always or very early on, I switched to ConvertKit for uh, sending emails, but I was posting them on Substack. And I moved the Generalist to a new site at the start of the year, and then also launched sort of a private community, which now has an actual page for it and all those things, because that's like going to be a big focus this year. And I've really been glad for having done that. I think it gave me a chance to cast the vision for the Generalist a little bit, and also gave me like a bit of a digital terrain, a product that I can like continue to work and improve. And so that really is something that excites me about the year ahead for sure. And then the final thing that was, I think, sort of a bit of a highlight this year was Philosophical Foxes. Like that was just like the pure joy and magic on the internet, and I'm really excited about that for next year. Definitely a lot of things like cooking, and like brings in my uh, fiction storytelling brain that I don't always get to exercise as much. So I'm super pumped about that.
That's
And
so
give us
cool. Yeah, man.
for folks who don't know a lot about it, what is the Philosophical Foxes project?
So Philosophical Foxes are like profile picture NFTs. It's at Foxes NFT on Twitter. And so I wrote basically a piece on OpenSea. And as part of that, my fiance was like, you should probably buy an NFT off OpenSea if you're going to write this piece. I was like, yeah, I should. That makes sense. So I bought one. And then I was like, in the shower, just thinking, I was like, what if I like make a collection just to understand how this works? And then pretty quickly, I'm sure you guys are the same, like you get an idea and then you can just like start snowballing with it and thinking of where it might go. And so I sort of started to think about what existing PFP projects, maybe why they failed to resonate with me as much as I would have hoped. And I think part of the thing I decided was that like the IP for NFTs is purposefully thin a lot of the time for these projects, like a Bored Ape or a Punk. Like we're now seeing them create partnerships with talent agencies and things like that to bring movies, film, TV shows into the market. But it's kind of impossible to know like what a single Bored Ape is like as a character. There's no depth to them as a character beyond their visual element. And so the thought process behind Philosophical Foxes was, what if you could create a PFP that had sort of three dimensions to it? It had a thought that you could see, so you had a sense of what it was interested in. It had emotional baggage in its metadata, so you could see like what its flaws were and what its peccadillos were, and virtues in its metadata. So it's like this one is a good listener. This one is funny. This one is good at handling spicy food.
It's
This
like
one
their
is nice
little
to
Tinder profiles for your NFTs.
Yeah, exactly. And the idea was that like you can give that to people and they actually are buying like a character that if you ever were to extend the universe for it, not everything would be permissible. That fox would have to act in certain ways that corresponded to its character. And so in that respect, it's more similar to how we treat IP today, which is like if you take the James Bond books and turn them into a movie, there are certain things that have to be a part of it, more or less.
There's like
So
a
yeah, that was the
D&D-ness
idea.
to it.
Yes, exactly. I think about that a lot. Like what are the alignments of them almost? And like how can you set them off onto little adventures or dilemmas or things like that, that essentially building an on-chain personality and backstory. So that's like something I'm going to play around with this year that I think will be really fun.
It's great. It's like the most Mario possible way to do an NFT project.
Mario Max to the max. Yeah.
Well, it keys on when you said like I learned a lot this year about what the Generalist should be. I feel like David and I did too with Acquired, and I think that. I mean, we've said this a zillion times, and I think we all say it in different ways. But like the internet is a big place, so just go be extreme in one facet of it, and you will attract the tribe of people who are as into whatever that extremeness as you are. And of course, that could be very negative politically or, you know, ideologically. But if your thing is like really deep dive, extremely ridiculously deep dives on companies, like it's there's clearly some audience for that, and it's not as big as, like, for us it's like we never want to be How I Built This. Well, we kind of can't be How I Built This because we're not as How I Built This as How I Built This, but they're not as acquired as we are, so they're it's a sort of nonsensical to explain it that way. But I guess what I'm getting at is, for us at least, we figured out the thing that makes Acquired differentiated is actually not the interviews with big name guests. Like for most podcast shows, they'd be like, well, who'd you have on? And my answer to that now typically is like, well, our really good episodes have no guests. And that's not because David and I
episode was 10 hours on Berkshire Hathaway with just
right. It's like, I don't know, because we're so, like you guys, so willing to go down 100-hour research rabbit hole to write a doctoral thesis on this story that's in most of the time still being written, or like it's sort of like an investment memo where we don't get to invest at the end, that like it creates differentiated content because it's not just doing a couple hours of prep work and then putting an interview guest in a chair.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like one of the concepts I sort of think about for what we're all doing is like value over replacement. And I think like finding the place where you can increase your value over a replacement pod. Like, yeah, you can get the same guest in a chair at 100 different podcasts in some respect, and you'll get a version of the same spiel. But it's pretty hard to do 10 hours on Berkshire at the same level of detail.
That's been I think that was actually sort of in the like lowlights challenges for Acquired this year. I think that we had already figured that out by the summer, like in the aftermath of the Berkshire trilogy for us. I think we figured that out then. But then the back half of the year with my daughter arriving, thanks to both of you guys and a bunch of people, we had a little help to finish out the season, and we did basically all guests for the last 2-3 months. And like, I think we had some great episodes, but like it really hit home for me that like the core meat of what makes Acquired is the episodes that are just us.
Right. Like we had some things that spiked on quality for interviews. Like the Michael Ovitz thing was just, that is one of my favorite interviews that we've ever done, if not my favorite. But it wasn't as differentiated as our content that's just us because, a lot of people can conduct an interview.
Any other lowlights that like came to mind for you guys?
We have a big 2021, which is like our, I don't think we've talked about this yet, but so 2020 March hit, we felt it was completely inappropriate to be like, no one wanted to listen to content on like, yeah, but how much of a multiple did the investors get on that thing when the big company bought the little company? It was like, it just felt very wrong. So we changed the show and we actually retitled it. We called it Adapting, and we did 3 episodes of like companies that were adapting, and we told one historical about Intel and Andy Grove, and we did this amazing interview with Mark Canlis, who's one of the Canlis brothers of Canlis Restaurant here in Seattle, that just was totally on the forefront of saving that business and all the employees and being incredibly creative and inspiring in the pandemic. But ultimately, like, a lot of people follow the show for something, and that was just not at all what people were following the show for. And you can see it in our analytics, like whether by people's commute habits changing and therefore their podcast listening changing, or because we decided to completely change the show and change the name of the show, our analytics took a gigantic hit on every measurable axis last March, April, May, June, and took a while for us to dig out of that.
Well, good for you guys for giving it a shot. I mean, good to test it out and then not stick with it.
Importantly, it's the Bezos two-way door, fortunately.
Yeah, was that a metrics driven thing, or like what What made you decide to go back?
I think it was a combination of certainly the metrics and the data were telling us that like it wasn't working, but also, at that time, like by the time we got to May, June, I think we realized, I mean, you guys were writing about this, you especially, Packy, like, yes, COVID and the pandemic was terrible, but like it also just opened this door to so many new possibilities too. And like it wasn't doom and gloom anymore, and the stock market was ripping. And we were like, huh, maybe we should be a little more optimistic here.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, we were like, actually, our normal type of content is exactly what people want right now. Like there's a massive opportunity cost to us trying anything new at the moment.
Yeah, everyone just wants to buy stocks right now. You got to tell them stocks.
Also, we haven't said it on this episode yet, but this is certainly not investment advice in any form, and everyone should do all their own research.
Amen.
Indeed.
Never is.
What about you guys?
Yeah, lowlights.
Mario?
I would say the summer was kind of a little tough for me, metrics wise in particular. Everything just grew more slowly. And I think I had also been sort of primed by the COVID appetite for online content that like suddenly disappeared a little bit during summer. I was like, oh man, what is happening here? Things aren't moving in the way that I have like grown accustomed to. And so I think I had to like learn a bit of patience on that. And then I'm actually going to share more about this soon, but just as a preview, like I wouldn't say this was necessarily a low light, but a necessary lesson for me, I think, was doing some fundamental work on the generalist's value proposition and business model. Like it works well as a subscription business, but I think content like this like wants to be free in many respects, especially when it's broader in scope. And so I spent a lot of time in the summer, sort of during that slower patch, like with a friend who like very generously offered to help me to think through this, like thinking from first principles, like what are the 3 value propositions the generalist is doing? Like who very specifically are the audience profiles and all of those things that I think I kind of skated past when I was just like in keep things alive and like stay above water mode. And so that was very important, but not always that fun because it forced me to do a bit of introspection and some harder thinking.
And for me, lowlights, it's just, I mean, like it's the greatest thing in the world. This is as much fun as I've ever had professionally. Like there's 0 complaints. It's also just like a lot. Like content is one of those things that like can just, fill every crevice and nook and cranny. And, like you feel guilty if you're not thinking about the next thing that you're working on.
Oh my
and
God. Yes.
For whatever reason, it all ends up pushing, for me at least, into like the last day or 2 before the piece is due, no matter how much advance time I give myself, like all that kind of stuff. Just like, normally I'm very happy and optimistic and even keeled. And like there were definitely times this year where I was like, I just have just 0 idea how I'm going to make anything in life work. I suck at everything that I'm doing. Like none of this, like, and that happened multiple times this year. And so like, again, it can't complain and like 0 complaints on this, but it was definitely like a pretty challenging year just from like between the fund and the writing, particularly the writing, just like keeping everything going. Like if you're out there listening and you have an email in my inbox and I haven't responded to it, like you are not alone. I had to like just let certain things break. And, I hate not responding to people and that kind of stuff, but like, there's just 0 way to juggle all of it. So I think my low light was that, and the highlight or the kind of takeaway for 2022 is like, I need to finally just man up and hire somebody, which I've really tried to avoid doing, but I think it'd be really, really helpful.
Dude,
not to mention
100%.
the parenting that you've been doing this whole time too. Like you've been parenting for 3 months now while quasi doing this. I'm just like, wow. I can't imagine you doing this the whole time.
Right. Because that's another thing that like very happily takes up any kind of like crevice of time that you have, because if as soon as I don't have to work, I want to go hang out with him.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just a lot of competing things for time. If I had the Hermione time turner, it would have been the easiest, best year ever. But certainly a
Well,
lot
and you
to
such a good
squeeze
point.
in.
Like our work, content creation, like create it feels pretentious to call it creative work, but it is creative work. And parenting are both things that like will infinitely expand to fill time that not allotted to them, but like that they possibly can.
Yes.
Like they will both take every ounce of your time.
And like middle of the nighttime, even, like
Yeah.
whether it's
You
a kid
cannot
waking up
turn
or
them
you
off.
waking up like with an idea. Yeah,
Yes.
it takes every amount of every hour of the day.
Especially the doing it with the personality type that we all have in order to have started each of these things. It's like a necessary personality type of like how can I make it better, and just continuing to
Yes.
go all out to make it better, and almost a guilt that comes with not giving it the energy that it needs to make it better. Like
Mm.
I used to feel like, oh, Dave and I'll Google around for a few hours before and then we'll hit record and like we'll see what happens. But now if I'm like, oh, I didn't consume every piece of media ever written about this topic before I started, I must have missed something, and I could have had a better perspective on this if I had consumed every piece of media.
That's
And
one of the funniest pieces of this whole thing is like, if I leave something on the cutting room floor, I'm like, oh God, they're gonna know that I didn't write about this obscure thing. Like nobody knows. I've already written 6 times as many words as anybody wants to read on a particular subject, but I feel guilty at leaving everything on the cutting room floor.
And somebody's gonna know.
Yeah,
And somebody's
exactly. Don't you find there's
And
always
you're
like
gonna hear
one
about it.
sort of finger looking for a bruise that's like, aha, you didn't do this. And you're like,
Oh,
I know, I'm sorry.
that I've gotten a lot better at this year, like just not giving a shit about like
That's a good practice.
about the nitpickers. Like there are just going to
Yeah.
be people out there who like will find flaws in everything that I do, and as long as like I'm giving my best effort and like think I'm
Yes.
directionally right, at some point you just can't care.
Question for you guys, like, I think we're all sort of recognizing that there is some emotional or mental health toll of this work. Like, what have you guys found works for keeping your stamina up, keeping your sanity? Any hacks that you feel equipped to share?
So it's like a little bit of like a flex, but I think you could totally switch to it too. David and I just don't do that much content, and that totally helps. Like, or at least we don't do that much of the like uniquely acquired thing. We do it 16 times a year, and like we have to prepare a lot also for these guest interviews, for the specials. We have to prepare some for the LP interviews, but at the end of the day, like Packy, I'm looking at you specifically, like a Monday and a Thursday piece at the level of depth that you do them. What the hell?
Totally. +1. That is exactly what I was going to say too.
And it's great because oh no, apparently Betty White just died.
Yeah.
No, what?
I know. Damn. Well, I guess 2022 Not Boring goes out to Betty White, but yeah, the Thursday ones actually end up being like a little easier for me to do because I know what I'm going to be writing about at least. And I think that they're, if anything, I think that maybe like the one challenge about the Thursdays for me is that they make me want to do fewer like company specific deep dives on Mondays. But otherwise, like, I think it's just nice going in and kind of knowing what the topic is going to be at least. And then like at least one thing is kind of ticked off the list there. It is a lot. And like, I would imagine 2023, 2024, I don't write those. This year, I already told myself like only 2 Thursday pieces a month, and I'm already breaking that rule because like these are, like I said, these are stories that I want to tell. It's like not at some point, about the money on those even. It's just like they're portfolio companies or they're companies that I've been like dying to dig into. And if I get a chance to do it and they like have timing that, needs to work out, then I just end up saying yes. And then I hate myself for it in the middle of whatever stretch of, multiple of those in a row that I have. But I don't know. At some point I'll figure that out, one thing at a time.
I'm trying to think of any other than these like structural changes, any other like mental health. I mean, one thing, Mario, is like, I do think picking your battles on what's going to be a flagship piece and what's going to be a really good piece that people will be glad they read, but it doesn't define your publication for the rest of your life. Like, we realized halfway in that, like, the TSMC one, we were like, oh, this is going to be signature. Berkshire, this is going to be signature. I think we kind of knew going into doing the FTX one, we were like, this is going to be a really good interview. And, like, I don't think it will be like when people think of Acquire, they're synonymous with this thing. And I picked the FTX one because that's one we did together and you know it the most intimately. But I think that's true of a lot of them. And at least for me, it's like there's two quality bars. That one is making sure that everything is well above the bar of will people be glad that they spent the time to do this? Because I do think audio in particular is a risk to ask people to spend their time doing that, given it's hard to quickly bounce. They sort of have to, they invest their commute or they don't. But then there's this other quality bar where if you can kind of feel it coming halfway into the research where you're like, oh, this has a chance of being one of our defining ones, making sure that you're like, you leave it all on the floor there. All in the field? All in the field.
Either way, leave it somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's a good way to think of it. Sorry, David.
The other one I'd add too is just like, for me, a big thing has just been accepting that like this is the field we're in. Like we're in a creative medium field, and there are like emotional aspects to our work that come with that, and that actually was like a big thing for me to get over because it's so different than the first 13 years of my career where it was like I have a job, it's like measurable on these things, it's performance oriented, it's not that it wasn't emotional, I didn't care, but it didn't feel as like it wasn't a creative process. And I think just accepting like, oh no, this is different, some of the things we're going to do are going to fail, that's okay. Some of the things we're going to do are going to succeed far beyond like whatever we ever expected. And just being like, oh, okay, I'm okay with that.
Has anyone watched the Taylor Swift documentary, Miss Americana?
I have not.
Only 17 times.
Really?
No, I've watched it.
Oh, it's really good. You would all really enjoy it. It's there's a few parts that are worth calling out here, but the one that like always sticks with me is she talks about how she built, and none of us are this extreme on any vector compared to Taylor Swift, but she talks about how she built basically her whole life from age 7 of like being good, being a force for good in the world, and having people like her and having people give positive feedback on the things that she makes. And when the VMAs, that whole thing in 2009 for the first time happened with Kanye, like that was the first time in her life she experienced a thing of like not feeling that positive external validation, and how she had to like spend a long time like recreating her whole psyche in order to make it not about, am I about to produce something that will create external validation for me, and much more about the like intrinsic gratification of doing a thing she loved well, which are super different things. They're super connected, but I think they're super different things.
That's such a good point. Hard to do that. But
much easier said than done.
Yeah, gosh.
We should all just be like T Swift.
Done. I usually went to the same beach town growing up, so she's a Stone Harbor, Avalon person, David.
That's right.
So you're kind of the celeb pack.
Yeah. So what you're saying is there's probably a song.
So you're saying
about
you dated Taylor Swift when you were younger.
Yeah.
I'm saying that
Which one's about packing?
Speaking of, this is a good preview. What are we all excited about for our respective media properties in 2022?
Do you guys want to kick it off? I'm just bouncing it back to you.
Yeah. Well, we don't want to foreshadow too much, but the kind of like we talked about earlier, Acquired has been this series of like expanding the concentric circles of things that we cover, starting with tech acquisitions that went well and ending up at wherever we are now. We're going to add a new concentric circle very
But
soon.
we're gonna try.
We're gonna try. We are gonna add one. It may work. It may not work. But
What we're saying is we're more open to telling great stories that are loosely business stories in the format of Acquired. As long as we do the type of research we do, we craft the narrative the way we craft the narrative, we do the analysis. They don't all have to be Delaware C corps that become public companies. And I think we realize that like in doing Bitcoin, in doing Ethereum, it's like, okay, Web3 is interesting. But like, what if one day we went full Mario and we were like, let's do an Acquired episode on a country? Or like, you could imagine sort of crazier things than just, hey, this looks like a company, but kind of isn't because it exists on the blockchain.
That's
Color
cool.
me intrigued.
So that's
stay
it's an
tuned.
exploration we're doing.
I think it'll always be like from a business perspective,
Right.
But yeah, we want to experiment with telling slightly broader stories.
Can't wait for the Acquired on France.
That is one I am equipped to talk about.
Yeah, no kidding.
Amazing.
What about
For
you guys?
me, I gave myself these 2 weeks off to think and whatever, and then I got COVID and along with everybody else, but my brain just kind of shut down on me for a week. So I've read a few different books, but not a ton of long-term planning. I mean, I think hopefully kind of more of the same. I already kind of know the first quarter's worth of sponsored deep dives at least, and I'm really excited about those. But then I also want to add more, more in the really hard problems category, like more stuff, more healthcare stuff, all of that. I think Web3 has been so much fun to explore and will obviously be a key focus of what I continue to do. But like, what are those other kind of huge things that I think I haven't spent nearly as much time on that I should be?
Web 4.
Web 4.
I will be very excited to read those. I also do not feel like I've spent much time on things like healthcare or climate, but you will do it great justice, I'm sure.
I'm reading Ministry for the Future right now, which is really interesting. If you guys haven't read it, it's
what is it, Kim Stanley Robinson?
Mm-hmm.
It's on a bookshelf right over there. Maybe
pick it up and read. It's interesting. There's like a few different kind of stories and things and ways that different chapters are written, all getting woven together. But I think ultimately it's just I'm halfway through, but it sounds like their plan is something like Klima, like a carbon-backed currency. But we will see.
What is Klima DAO? I was looking at the website, and it seems really difficult to figure out like what. But this is me and everything in Web3. I look at a website and I'm like, shoot, I don't get it. Am I dumb or is this esoteric? And the answer is somewhere in the middle.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, well, certainly you're dumb, but no, you have now a corpus of work to suggest that that's not the case. So what is Klima? Klima essentially is like a black hole for carbon credits, or for carbon offsets. What they want to do is be able to just suck in as many kind of 2008 and beyond Vera certified carbon credits, and by doing so drive up the price of carbon credits. But it's an ohm fork. So if you're familiar with ohm, they essentially they're trying to build a currency that's backed by, instead of a basket of different cryptocurrencies and stable coins like ohm, they're one of the forks that's trying to do that exact same thing, but with carbon offsets. And there's a million challenges with it. Not all carbon offsets are created equal and all sorts of things, but the idea would be you buy a carbon credit, you put it into the pot, you get your Klima at a slight discount because you've bonded your BCT, and then you can stake at one of the ohm fork ridiculous APYs. I think it's currently probably 30,000% APY, because they just kind of inflate the supply over time. But ideally where this goes is that they can suck in more different types of carbon offsets, and in the future it just gets way more expensive to pollute because they're artificially driving up the price of all of these offsets.
That's super interesting.
Wow, so you have to be a big player in the market to actually move price like that, but presumably yeah.
And there's early signs that they have been, and this is the voluntary market and not the government, so it's a smaller market, but they are they have already kind of, I think, made a dent in terms of, it's millions and millions of tons worth of offsets already purchases.
So it's
a
kind
graph that like Macquarie did or put together something where it's like the normal kind of offsets purchased, and then October when climate launched, it just like shoots straight up. So there is, in that piece of the market, they're having some sort of an impact.
So it's kind of like what the Fed is doing to the U.S. economy. They're trying to do to the carbon credit economy.
Yes.
Huh. All right, David. What else we have on our little agenda?
Wait, we gotta hear from Mario.
Yeah, what's Mario excited for?
I think I've sort of previewed the big things. Some new Fox stuff coming in January, so all will be revealed shortly on the sort of roadmap for that, which is going to be fun. And then again, some things around the community that are being formalized that I'm excited by. And then content-wise, there are a few pieces that are in the works that I'm like really looking forward to. One on sort of like an internet OG, where hopefully I'm going to get some really interesting access to tell that story at a level of depth I haven't
Color
seen.
me intrigued.
And and then similarly, I'm working on a trilogy in the crypto space that I think is going to be also really cool. So those two are cooking, and I'm not sure when they'll come out, but I really want to do more of the trilogy pieces when I find a compelling subject, just because I do think it's like a really fun way to tell the story and like pseudo write the book in a definitive way. And then beyond that, like I'm sure I'll do Web 2 stuff, Web 3 stuff. I would love to spend more time on frontier emerging market stuff. That's always been like an interest, and I did a decent amount of Latin America last year, but would like to do sort of more there, more C, and more Africa, just because I think that's like very fascinating.
Yeah, man, I bought Bridgetown 2 Holdings after one of our idea dinners. I think that might have been your pick.
That was right. Oh my gosh, is it de-SPAC?
I don't think so. This was like the Peter Thiel Southeast Asia SPAC.
Yeah, it looked like it might be Tokopedia, but that obviously didn't happen. That was the target that like was looming at the time. Interesting. We'll see what happens.
Can you believe SPAC Mania was this year?
No.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, here we go. It de-SPACed into Property Guru.
Oh, that's right. It was announced anyway.
Thailand, Vietnam, and Indonesia. Okay, yes. Wow, fascinating. I totally missed that story.
Interesting. Well, maybe to wrap up, we had a bunch of other stuff on the agenda, but I think we've actually hit on a lot of it. Maybe let's do best investment for each of us. Best performing investment of 2021. Again, not investment advice for anybody, but I think this is fun. This was fun for me to look back on.
Oh, okay. Well, we're all gonna have the same one.
I know.
All right.
No?
I mean, likely.
Okay, so I was gonna say a very good investment for me was Roblox, which in part was getting lucky on the volatility, but whatever. But then I was like, oh wait a minute, nope, Solana. Like, raise your hand if yours isn't Solana.
No hands going up.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Mine is not
Packy.
Solana.
Oh. Okay. Well, okay. So, Packy, you go last. I'll do real quick. I thought mine was going to be kindergarten's investment in Brain Trust, which it was for most of the year, but here at the end of the year, as Brain Trust has declined a little bit and Solana has gone up, Solana has surpassed it.
I think I missed, some of the truly jaw-dropping Solana games, but thankfully I bought in when Packy's piece went out. So thanks, Packy. Still had a nice.
Thanks for the alpha.
Ethereum just like continuing to DCA and build that position over the past few years. This obviously was a good year for that. And then Terra has had essentially a wild second half that I don't know which between like Terra and Solana, like I'm up more on. Just like I haven't taken a close look, but I'm sure it's one of those two basically.
Mario, I did a bunch of research after being inspired by your piece and bought a bunch around that period too. So thank you.
Let's go. I love it. This is what it's all about, guys. Friends doing friends alpha.
So for me, there's a few different that it could have been. Axie actually did really well, particularly if you staked your Axie at like 130%. So that one was probably somewhere around, I don't know where it is today, but at its peak, probably a 10x on the original investment. When I wrote the interface phase, I just bought like a little bit of all of the metaverse, kind of like decentralized metaverse tokens. So like the Sand, Mana, the Somnium Cube, those shot up when Facebook did its meta thing. So those were like 10x's, but on very, very small amounts. But the winner is actually not an investment, but a contribution. And Not Boring Capital's contribution to Constitution DAO ended up being the best performing investment of the year so far. So have taken.
Is that because of the people token? How did that work?
Yeah. So the interesting thing about Web3 is that anybody can start a liquidity pool. So we lost, but people had their people tokens, and so somebody started a liquidity pool on Uniswap, started trading, and now it's been picked up by pretty much every exchange outside of Coinbase. So it's on Binance, it's on a few other kind of like weirder exchanges. So waiting for Coinbase there, but took a bunch off the table so that my LPs didn't murder me for investing in that, and then I still have
Thank
a
you.
bunch of it.
Yeah.
If we get to $1, we return the fund, which would be just absolutely unbelievable.
Wow.
That is the most
wild,
2021
man.
thing
I know
possible. That is so on the nose.
We're not going to get to $1, but a boy can dream.
I love it. Wow.
Can we do a little lightning round of like, I had one topic I wanted to discuss with you guys in the style of the original idea dinner, like an investment idea, or at least like help me understand why this thing is this price. Let's play that game. So after doing our FTX episode and better understanding the way that crypto exchanges work, I was looking at Coinbase's stock, and I set up a little template in Koifin, which is like a very cool, has a great free tier to be able to do some just basic analysis of stocks. And so Coinbase has had this big decline recently, but also the fundamentals have improved dramatically recently, which leads to some charts looking really crazy. One of which is it used to trade at a price to sales. This is last 12 months sales, so last 12 months revenue of like 50x, and has taken this huge plunge based on A, making more money, and B, the stock price falling apart, where it's now on a price to sales basis below Microsoft and almost down to Facebook. So like if you think about the like FANG companies or the big tech companies being sort of like reasonable but sort of like low multiples at this point, like it's Coinbase has fallen from like stratospheric into like less than Microsoft. And then when you look at their growth, you look at like on the annual growth rate, Facebook is growing at 40%, Microsoft's growing at 20%. This is top line numbers. Amazon at 30%. Coinbase is growing at 626%. So it's like a growth monster. When you look at their net income margin, so you look at like Google's net income margin of 30%, Facebook at 35%, Microsoft at 38%. Coinbase is higher than all of those at 50% net income margins. So it's the best net income. It's growing way faster on a revenue basis than any of those. And the stock is falling off a cliff. I was trying to figure out, like, is this just crypto risk? Like, do people view, look, it's a crypto exchange, so hard to give it 30 years in the future of, let's just give it a few years in the future. Or the other thing that I was trying to think of is like, maybe investors are just braced for incredible margin compression in crypto exchanges as it becomes more competitive and Coinbase becomes less of a you know, they kind of were first to market and enjoy some really healthy benefits from that. But does anyone else have other theories on why this thing's not valued 5 or 10x higher?
I would love to see what their revenue is today, like December 31st, 2021, just for this single day, because wash trading is still cool in crypto. I think anybody who has a loss on anything is selling and buying back in and paying. I paid hundreds of dollars to Coinbase earlier today, and I would imagine a bunch of other people have as well. That's not a bear case. That is a
interesting.
That is a bull case. I actually kind of think, I'm less worried about competition than I would have been before. I was slightly skeptical on Coinbase before because of that reason, because there are more exchanges and more dexes that will ultimately win out because they're actually decentralized. I think just being the really easy on-ramp is a really great position to be in. So I don't know. I'm more bullish than I was in the middle of the year on Coinbase.
Yeah, I'd say the same. I feel like they've shown a desire to be more progressive on product than I expected at the IPO. Like it felt like it was a really sluggish product organization at the time, and so it was kind of like, man, they're going to get lapped by FTX. They're going to, lose share to all these dexes, and then just like with the single emergence of the NFT exchange, you were like, oh, they're like not gonna, go quietly into this good night.
And they're also sorry, yeah, they're also Tencent like in like they have a portfolio of pretty much any crypto company worth salt out there. Coinbase Ventures has put money into, and so I would imagine the portfolio is worth a shitload of money. And I believe it's just all off balance sheet.
All right, so flash survey among the four of us, who I would say to varying degrees are all on very sophisticated to on the bleeding edge of crypto investing and adoption out there. Do any of us not use Coinbase meaningfully?
No, I use it a bunch.
Me too.
Yeah.
I think that's your answer right there.
There we go.
There we go.
Well, what is your DEX of choice, guys?
Uniswap.
Okay, I'm Sushi.
You're Sushi, yeah.
Sushi has been. I tweeted about it the other day. Like the insufficient liquidity thing just kind of pops up even when it's not true, and it's a really sluggish front end. I've not had the best Sushi Swap experience.
I'm trading such small amounts, Packy, that
Well, no. I mean, like, I'm not actually, to be clear, breaking their liquidity. Like it is, I could put like 0.01 something in, and it would just say that it was broken. So it's,
really,
yeah.
Okay, I haven't had that happen to me, but yeah, I should probably play around with Uniswap more than I have, to be honest.
I have had such a confusing and expensive experience with DEXs, at least in the Ethereum world, that I have opened centralized exchange accounts at like every centralized exchange that is legal in the US, because like if I can get something on a centralized exchange, that's a way better experience and way cheaper in most cases than finagling my way to buy some ETH, flip it over, and then trade it on a decentralized exchange.
1,000,000%.
I know I'm like not a true crypto, like I'm not cool for doing that, but like it's just
as long as you buy it somewhere as long as you don't buy it on Robinhood or somewhere where you can't actually like transfer it and do anything with it, then I don't think that matters.
Right. By the way, the other bull case on Coinbase is exactly this topic of like, it's a freaking centralized company. Like they're in a position to do what Facebook did to the internet, to crypto. Like if you think about this ETH2 transition, like I'm pretty sure Coinbase plus one other party is going to sufficiently control the ETH2 majority. So like,
I'm sure this is not novel, but I just put two and two. Yeah, this is why Jack is going to war here. It's about Coinbase. It's got to be about Block versus Coinbase.
Interesting, yeah.
And particularly targeting Andreessen.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Interesting.
Games within games.
Indeed.
I think Jack made it pretty clear from his tweets that he's pure of motive and incentive, so it couldn't be that.
You're
Jack
right.
is an angel from on high.
Yeah. As a Twitter shareholder, I can tell you the guy
Have y'all
does not
read
give a
Hatching
shit
Twitter?
about profits.
Oh man,
Oh.
we all thought this was going to be a bigger year for Twitter than it was. I feel like.
Yeah, Packy, are you still a big Twitter bull?
I am currently harvesting those Twitter losses, but we'll be back in the beginning of 2022.
He's taken about 31 days as a bear here.
Yeah, I'll take a short bear period. Hopefully, I'm sure they're going to rip now while I'm on the sidelines. But but yes, I'm still like I remain at a total addict. I think most of us have Twitter to thank for a lot of our business. But just beyond that, so much of the conversation, the discourse still happens there. I can't believe they've done such a poor job monetizing it.
Is it actually that poor? I haven't actually looked at revenue numbers there for a while. Or is it just that the narrative is that it's poor?
No, it's both. They're, I think, at like 5% maybe of Facebook's monetization or Facebook's revenue, somewhere in that range. I mean, Facebook's a behemoth, but Facebook also doesn't monetize, WhatsApp, and there's more that Facebook could be doing as well. Yeah, I think it's like 5% of Facebook's revenue, somewhere around there.
Do we have time to do a round the horn quick favorite products or apps? Because I know
that's
David,
what I was gonna say. Let's do a lightning round. Lightning round carve outs for best of 2021. We don't need to go through every category, but
everybody pick one to start.
Pick one, and then we can keep going and afterwards and just do favorites.
Book.
Go for it.
Okay. My favorite book was Ada or Ardor by Nabokov, as apparently it's more correctly pronounced. Really long and intricate, but very interesting discussion of time and always beautiful writing. So it took me ages to finish, but I really enjoyed it.
I've not heard of that. You wrote Lolita, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah,
Lolita and Pale Fire are sort of like.
I've only read Lolita. I gotta add that to my list.
It's a good one. It's a slog, but a good one.
All right, sticking with books, I've talked about both of these a lot on Acquired, but actually, I've got a few books out there on here. Anything by Arthur C. Clarke, who I discovered this year. So good. Classic, old school sci-fi. Childhood's End, I think, is my favorite, but you can't go wrong. He wrote 2001 and then a bunch of sequels to that, which I didn't realize he and Kubrick collaborated and wrote the screenplay for the movie for 2001 together, and then he was writing the novel kind of simultaneously with that. It was like it wasn't like it was a book before a movie or a movie before a book. It was a deeply collaborative project, which the movie never made any sense to me, and then I read the book like, oh, this makes so much more sense. Like, I understand what is going on here.
I watched 2001, the movie, pretty recently in the last year, and I cannot believe that was created in 1968. I mean, the visuals are like it. I know they took on easier challenges than Star Wars took on, but it looks 10 to 20 years after Star Wars, which it was actually 11 years before Star Wars.
Wow, I love how you have that Star Wars date just lock and loaded in there. Oh my gosh.
Well, I was right the first time, 9 years. Yeah. Well, you got 71 or 77, 81, 83. Yeah. Too much Star Wars. But yeah, like Kubrick and Arthur C. Clarke, like from a filmmaking perspective, were just decades ahead.
Kubrick, CAA client, Michael Ovitt's client. Let's see what else in books. I've got The Expanse that I've talked about a ton. Cannot recommend highly enough for recent stuff. Last book in the series just came out. Thought it was a great way to end it. And then fun one. I got so many parenting book recommendations, but the one that stuck with me and I think is good, that is just so fun, is Michael Lewis's book Home Game, about his experiences in early fatherhood. And there's no advice. It's a Michael Lewis book. It's not like this is how you're going to get your kid to sleep through the night by 12 weeks. It's just really heartwarming and lovely. Highly recommend that.
That was a great one. I read that one too. Ugh.
All right, I got a book. I just read this on vacation on my 10-year-old Kindle, which is still a great device. The book is Project Hail Mary. Other folks read it?
Awesome
So
book.
Andy Weir.
Andy Weir, yeah, it's his latest.
Yeah.
Same author as the Martian. I think this is probably the best fiction I've ever read, certainly read in the last 5 years, and was such a good reminder to me to go read fiction. Like I keep reading these like business books and business like I basically have been on the hunt for Shoe Dog or something like it ever since reading Shoe Dog, and I've found like a dozen. And this is a good way of shaking me out of that very specific. I wouldn't call it a rut because I really enjoy them, and I think they teach a lot of good lessons. But um, yeah, it's such a well told story, and it makes me look to try and apply science everywhere because Andy Weir does such a good job of like making every plot point about how the protagonists scienced their way to figure it out.
You know what's cool about Andy Weir is, if I'm not wrong, he wrote The Martian in like newsletter format. Like he would
Yes,
post sections and get
for free.
feedback from audience. Yeah, which is so cool. I really want to write a book like that someday. I think it's such a cool idea.
And then he got a book deal and then pulled in an editor and sort of rewrote the whole thing with the editor to be more of a novel format to then publish it. And I think when he was writing it, he was actively employed as a software engineer.
That's pretty
Interesting.
rad.
Dude, Meyer, you should totally do that with the Generalist.
It would be fun, right? I
Oh,
mean,
man.
maybe like chapter 2 of the Generalist at some point when I allow myself to,
There's
share
such
more
a good novel
more
to be
fiction.
written about like tech culture, like
100%.
from like an
PC
insider who
culture.
like understands, like not like a New York
Not the
Times
circle?
journalist is going to go right. Yeah, not the circle. Oh my
Yes,
God, the
exactly.
I got halfway through
Like-
the circle and I just gave up on it. It was
Brutal.
terrible.
Yeah.
It's so
Like
bad.
Secession for VC would
Yes.
be. I mean,
Oh my
that's a
God, you
very
could
high bar,
crush this.
but that would be the best. That was my favorite show of the year for forever.
Oh, me too. So good.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
just unreal. It's so good. Jesse Armstrong as a writer is like just elite. He's like as funny as Armando Iannucci, like does Shakespearean low points and has like Sorkin snappy dialogue, but not corny. It's like he's so impressive.
Do you follow No Context Succession on Twitter?
No, but I'm going to now. What is it really good?
It's incredible. It's just screenshots with the dialogue, look at the closed captions enabled, and it's just like you get Tom's one-liners or Greg's one-liners, and like
Gosh.
it's a wonderful treat to see in your Twitter feed 2 or 3 times a day.
Did you guys ever watch Peep Show?
No.
It's Armstrong's like most famous show pre-secession.
Ooh.
And it's like a British comedy that like won a bunch of awards as best British comedy for several years. It ran for like 9 seasons, but I watched that like I guess when I was younger, and always thought it was like maybe the funniest show I'd ever seen. And so now when you watch Secession, you're like, oh man, he's like doing the same kind of jokes, but like in an American voice and in this like high drama style. It's very interesting.
Huh. All right, on the list. Packy book.
Oh man! All right, so I think we're doing a lot of sci-fi. I'm going to stick with that, and I'm going to do a memory called Empire and a desolation called Peace. 2 books by Arcady Martin. I don't know. I pretty much only I've gone, I think, from reading a lot of nonfiction to mostly fiction and mostly specifically sci-fi this year. So I would say that those 2. Trying to see if there's anything else. Looking through the old Kindle, I'm on a 113-day reading streak, and not to brag or anything here, but according to my Kindle, broke my previous record.
Becky, while you're looking, I just finished here on vacation at the Airbnb a tour through Rabbits, which I greatly enjoyed. I thought it was a fun romp. It didn't quite live up to like Ready Player One status for me, but
Packy
what do you think?
recommended
Have
that,
you finished it yet? Yeah.
Yeah, I finished it. It's, I mean, like the comparison that the person made was Ready Player One meets Haruki Murakami, and Murakami is my favorite author of all time. So it did not meet that bar for me, but certainly a fun, like I couldn't put it down kind of read.
Yeah, totally. Page turner.
Ready
Page
Player
turner.
One is pretty bad. Do we agree
Yes.
with that?
Yeah.
It's just
I thought it was
popcorn.
just
Yeah,
It's popcorn.
yeah.
just terrible.
But it was
It's,
it's popcorn, but it, like I feel like it kind of like presaged like and it was like it kicked off a zeitgeist. I don't think
Yes.
Rabbits is gonna do the same.
No,
Like it's very good and a page turner, but
it's like how
I agree with that.
it's a. Have you heard of the term in the music industry, a bop? Like it's a bop
yeah,
of
it's a bop.
sci-fi
Yep.
novel.
Totally.
Yes, it is totally. It's like could be written by an algorithm.
Oh,
Man.
that is shade coming from a fiction writer if I've ever heard one.
To be fair,
I am not a fiction writer compared to Ernest Cline. Ernest Cline has like obviously been way, has actually published shit. So it is purely from a reader's perspective. But I did not think it was not my favorite book by a long shot.
to be fair, that was very, very, very good compared to Ready Player 2.
Oh really?
Oh yeah, I haven't even touched that.
I haven't even heard of that.
Oh gosh. Favorite
any-
product, guys?
My 16-inch MacBook is the finest product I've ever owned.
It's unbelievable.
It's just absolutely incredible.
Ooh, is it worth upgrading from an M1 Air?
It serves a different purpose. So I have stopped thinking about this device as a laptop in the same way that I thought about all the 13 inches I had before this as a laptop. This is like an aircraft carrier, but it's an aircraft carrier, like it's a complete home desktop setup that I can fit in my largest backpack. And so like it's great if you're planning on working remotely a lot, or it's great if you want to be able to like do spreadsheets on vacation or in coffee shops where you're like, I'm not going to be at my big monitor for a while or something like that. But it is a totally different device than like a 13-inch Air. Yeah, but it's amazing. It's fast. The screen's unbelievable.
So fast.
Battery, I think I went through 50% of the battery on a flight from Lisbon to Seattle. So
Wow.
Amazing.
That
I
is
have the
nuts.
I'm literally looking now at my 14-inch new MacBook M1, my Pro whatever iPhone, and my iPad, and talking shit on Apple on Twitter that they won't be in the top 10. I stand by that take, and I might write it up at some point. But they make a hell of a good product. It's hard to argue against what they're doing. I guess mine, I'll go a slightly different direction. Mine has just, I think, been MetaMask this year. Or Rainbow, just like kind of the idea of having a wallet that you can go log into a bunch of different things and just play around with and bring inventory with you, I think is very, very cool right now. And it's like, open up a whole different side of the internet this year. But I think we'll get increasingly compelling over the next year or so as people build kind of more experiences for the fact that you're showing up to their site with an inventory.
yeah,
I like that
I
one.
love that take.
that's a good
was-
that and it's basically OAuth, but without needing to trust Facebook or Google with
Yeah.
holding the keys to all of your kingdoms.
Yes.
I was going to shout out Phantom for that reason too.
Mm-hmm.
I think Phantom is like a beautiful product and really good. I'm a big fan of Rainbow too. The other ones that I had on my list were Patty. Have you ever been to a Blank Street in New York?
One just opened up across the street. I know those guys. They're great. They had a real estate
I
like
love
kind of
those
fund
guys.
before, and then they just
Yeah.
decided to start Blank Street.
Yeah, so like I go now every day. I'm in Brooklyn like at least once a day. Isam is like one of my favorite people, so part of it is very self-motivated, but I also just think it's a really good product.
What is this? I haven't heard of.
Sorry. It's like small format coffee shop, so it's trying to be like Luckin for the US minus fraud. Which I think is a good playbook. And I mean, these guys are so deep in the economics of coffee shop stuff and real estate.
Yeah.
And the way they started was with basically like coffee carts, which are something you see in New York kind of a lot. But they have these really beautiful sort of I don't know, not mint green, sage green trucks that you can order ahead via the app, which is very nice, and just like go pick it up. And the coffee is really good. It's like, as a result, at least $1 to $2 cheaper than like every other New York third wave style coffee shop. And yeah, like rapid. So I like go every day, and biased, but a bit of a super fan.
So
Yeah,
is it
I wanna
now spaces or still just trucks?
Both. They do both.
Yeah.
Cool.
I would go a lot more if it weren't for my actual favorite non-tech product of 2021, Cometeer Coffee.
There you go.
Do
Talking
I
your
need
own
to
book.
try it,
Love it.
Packy?
Oh my God, you do. You should go to cometeer.com/notboring to get 50% off your first box.
I will say, I don't think I've
all right,
ever
you've
seen a
got me.
more effective, like I've seen a lot of people on Twitter say like, I've bought Cometeer. And then the second sentence is because I read about it on Not Boring. Like it's like, you know the numbers, or maybe you don't, and they know the numbers, but like this has to be a wildly successful sponsorship for them.
This worked. There were a bunch of them this year. I don't know if you saw the Will Manitas tweet, which was my favorite of
that
all
was so
time,
cool.
on the success of the Science IO one. So there were a bunch that were up there, I think, this year on the Sponsor Deep Dive front. But certainly for a consumer product, this one takes the cake by far. It's just really good. Like, there's not many products that you could recommend that then like everybody comes back and is like, this is fucking awesome, and then spreads the word themselves. Like, not one person, I think this is true, the whole time has replied and said like, yeah, it was okay. Like everybody was like, this is awesome.
Huh.
What was when you guys were chatting about doing something together? How did that Nord, VPN is one of our sponsors that acquired. Like, that's sort of a consumer product, but like it was more about telling their story as a company and hiring, and like, how did that conversation go for you? Like, it's always been in my mind that consumer products would not work on stuff like us. Like, we're not, but clearly this has worked for you.
This is a high AOV consumer product, which I think is important, has enough of a tech story to it, and it's one of those things like Excel where like nobody in the whole audience doesn't love coffee, and so I think that that's a really important piece. But it came about, Austin Reef, the Morning Brew, was investing and told me, he was like, I'm doing this thing, here's the valuation, it sounds crazy, please just go meet these guys. And so I talked to them and I was like, oh my God, I need to invest right about during kind of all of the above this product. And so, just decided to do the normal kind of Not Boring treatment, tell their story, talk about the business model, and then a little bit about, the product. But I'm not a coffee reviewer, so that wasn't, kind of the thrust of the thing. But I think it was just people kind of being aware of the fact that this thing existed, where literally it just takes me 2 seconds to make a cup of coffee in the morning because I just run it under hot water and dump it in a cup. And so I think the kind of quality combined with the ease just resonated. But I was not expecting it to go as well as it did.
Huh. Oh, I just ordered some. So I'll give you my review.
Can't wait to hear it.
Can I shout out one other product that I just started using in the past few days? I don't have any affiliation with it. I just think it's really good. Craft Docs.
Oh, I don't know this.
What is it?
It's like a Notion competitor, but it's just very fast, very elegant, really pleasant to use. And I just have been playing around with it over the past few days, and I think it'll be the place that I like store the more evergreen pieces of the Generalist sort of inner workings. Shareable, nice.
It's amazing that people still have the balls to launch new note-taking apps.
Yeah, totally.
Well, it's like, so the way I started my like developer career was by building two to-do list apps for the iPhone when it first came out. And I realized like the cool thing about to-do list apps, and I think note-taking apps are exactly the same way, is there's a super fragmented set of needs and everybody has their own opinion on like how the perfect one should work. And so there's just like lots of opportunity to make one that like there will never be winner take all dynamics in to-do lists or note-taking apps.
That's a good point.
Totally. I'll go quick. My product is AngelList. We talked about this a bunch on the Not Boring episode with Packy, but like I can't like literally I am just a customer of theirs. There's no other affiliation, but like it's unbelievable. Like we would not, Nat and I would not be able to do kindergarten without it. And like the level, just like for us personally, of like being able to run a venture fund, like a professionally run venture fund on the same order of like Madrona and all the other great places like I had done in the past, with no no full-time staff, doing it with Nat and I both having other full-time occupations, like, is a complete game changer.
I mean, the deal, and we don't need to go into specifics on it, but the deal that we just last did, I think, just shows what you can do in venture in the year of our Lord 2021. It was like the fastest transaction of all time.
Totally. Like, it's and that's just one example. Like, we've done many together, and
Yeah.
I think we did. Nat and I were just going over this. I think we made 37 investments in
This month.
We're not at your level, Packy. We made 37 investments in 6 months. I don't think I had made 37 investments in my entire 12-year venture career before that.
Yeah.
So it's amazing.
It's great. I think this quarter is going to be like 50.
You're just, as always, you're in your own league.
I mean, who knows if that's good or bad or what? But I mean, without AngelList, that is, I mean, maybe you can do like 3. Like it's just,
it's good and bad. But like, the thing about venture, like, and we've been talking about this on Acquired for years. You guys talk about it too. It's like, it's about the wins. All that matters are the wins. Nothing else matters. And how do you get more wins? Like, you could either be really, really great at picking, which some people are, and that's why Sequoia exists and Andreessen and the like. Or you could invest in 50 companies a quarter.
I know, and it's weird. I keep looking back.
Not that you're not great at picking, too, Packy, but
of course, incredible picking. But I keep looking back at the list of companies, and I do this like every quarter. I go back in the list. I'm like, are there things on here that like I'm just doing because I want to, because I invest in a lot of stuff, and I really feel really good about a lot of these companies. Like, I also think that it is true, and I think Balaji put this in his most recent post on Mirror Table, that like there are just way more good companies being built and so many fewer entrepreneurs making, like, it feels like just the level just kind of raises every year, where like there's a certain set of mistakes that the previous generation of entrepreneurs made that like you just no longer make, or like a certain level of things that like the best entrepreneurs knew that now everybody knows. And like I do think that bar just kind of continues to raise. Obviously markets are much bigger and global and all of that, but it's a wild. I'm really excited to see kind of 5 years down the line what happens in terms of like liquidity for all of these and all of that. But I really do think there's a lot of great companies being built right now.
Well, on that, feels like a good place to end the year.
That's a great place to end the year. I'm pumped for
great companies and great stories to come.
Guys, well, awesome becoming friends with, we all knew each other a little bit before, but I mean, amazing getting to become closer friends.
That is one of the best things. This has been so cool. Like, I mean, you guys live next to each other in Brooklyn, but we all live around the country, and
we got to do something together in person. Let's figure it out.
Know.
We'll do some really kind of like multi. I mean, we all have these. What is it? These acronyms: ACQ, NB, TG, whatever. But some kind of summit or something.
I would be super fun. An idea dinner.
An idea dinner.
Yeah.
An idea weekend.
That would be awesome. Yeah,
that would be a lot of fun.
Oh, it'd be great.
Also, we don't even have to. I mean, we should try and work towards a summit. I love that idea. But we also should just do something in person as friends.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, strictly summits
with the mics
off. Ben's only in this if it's going as protocol.
You guys wouldn't drink with me today, so all friendships are off.
That's true. I'm saving it for in person though.
Great.
All right, everyone, have a great New Year's Eve. Happy 2022.
Happy 2022. Thanks everyone for joining us today.
Happy New Year.
Guys.
Later.
Great year ahead.
Later.